I drove a rental sedan through harvested cornfields, dust sneaking in around the window seals and catching on the collar of my pressed dress blues. On the passenger seat, a small velvet box rattled with every pothole, smaller than a quarter, heavier than a sigh. I killed the radio so I could hear the tires hum along the old Church Street road that used to carry me home. The house sat still beneath a row of red maples. I did a quick ER-style self-check on the porch, breathing steady, pulse calm, hands sure, then shouldered my duffel and stepped onto the worn boards. The door opened before I could knock. The air smelled like pot roast and lemon cleaner, and underneath both a film of fatigue. "I'm home," I said. Mom hugged me, hands cold and shaking. My stepfather nodded. My little brother leaned on the fridge in a team jersey, eyes bright like someone who just decided something. "Thought you'd go straight to the VA," he smirked. I glanced at the wall clock to keep my face from reacting. "I'm fine," I said. "Wanted to stop here first." We sat. The vinyl tablecloth purple grapes was singed at one corner. I set the velvet box on it and a brown envelope, savings I meant to use to fix Mom's roof. My brother stared at the envelope like it was a hot tip at the track. "Figure you'll top off the family fund," my stepfather coughed. "Church is still taking up a love offering. Folks care about you." "I appreciate it," I said, "but I want to see an itemized bill. I'll pay the roofer direct or run it through TRICARE. Cash isn't how I do it." The weather in the room changed. My brother gave a sharp laugh. Fresh back from the war and scared to touch money. I looked at him not like a sister, but like a medic doing triage. "Not scared," I said evenly. "I like things clean." Mom slid in between us. "We're family. God knows our hearts." She set her Bible by the silverware like another witness at the table. I started to tell them about the night I stitched a stranger by flashlight and how discipline, not miracles, is what keeps people alive. But my brother scraped his chair back hard enough to squeal. "This family carried you since the day you ran off to enlist," he said, "and you bring that little piece of metal home like it's supposed to bless us." My weight shifted on instinct, hips tucked, shoulders loose, the way you do with an agitated patient. "Sit down," I said, calm as a blood pressure cuff. "Don't make a scene." Before I finished, his forearm knocked into mine. The velvet box skated, popped open, flashed, and disappeared under the cabinet. I caught the chair before it fell, my body twisting just enough that my cheek clipped the counter's edge. A white flare went off behind my eyes, iron bloomed in my mouth. Mom screamed and then froze. My stepfather stepped in and stopped like he'd hit an invisible fence at the tile. A neighbor's head peeked in the window. "We're fine," Mom called. She tripped. The curtain came down hard. I touched my thumb to my lip, thick where the skin split, thin where the tissue pressed. Muscle memory took over, gentle pressure, elevate, assess the bleed. My ears filled with my own pulse. I sat upright, inhaled for 4, exhaled for 8, breathing discipline to keep the mind from shaking. "Bandages," Mom said, hands shaking so hard the roll hit the floor. I caught it, folded a square of gauze, held it in place. My stepfather offered a dish towel and lowered his voice. "I'll drive you to urgent care, but give me your PIN first. I'll pay the copay." I looked up and met his eyes. "No need, insurance covers it and I can drive myself." I stood, the room tilted and then corrected. In the cabinet's reflection, I saw a woman with a thin line of blood at the lip, uniform still crisp, spine still straight. Mom gripped my hand. "Don't make this big. It's inside the house. Outsiders will talk." I thought of forward operating base rumors, everyone starting with "I heard." Rumors never stopped a hemorrhage. I picked up the velvet box, seated the metal, snapped it shut. Then I opened my notes app and wrote 3 lines. "Kitchen impact, split lip, no loss of consciousness." I lifted my phone and took a picture. "I'm going to the hospital," I said, voice no louder, just steadier. "I want a medical record. We can talk after that, if there's anything left to say." My brother smiled without teeth, eyes sliding to the envelope. He whispered like it was scripture. "No one owes anyone except God." I hauled the duffel over my shoulder and grabbed my keys. At the threshold, I looked at Mom. Her hand was spread over the Bible. I wanted to peel those fingers off the heavy book and wrap them around a warm mug, but sometimes a hand has to leave on its own. "I'll call," I said. No promises when. No promises what. Outside, an early fall wind worked under my hem. The streetlight threw yellow on the driveway. Crickets sawed the same old chorus. I took the porch steps. When the door clicked behind me, the latch made a tiny sound, less like a lock, more like a line in the sand. I slid into the driver's seat, set the velvet box in the console, and added one more note. Choose tactical silence. I didn't call a buddy from my unit. I didn't call the cops. The drive to the ER isn't long, but it's more than miles. It's the distance between what they'll say and what happened. I put the car in gear, eased off the grass, and let the quiet lead me where the truth could breathe. I didn't go straight to the ER. At the turnoff by the county fairgrounds, the string lights that used to blaze all summer hung dull as empty seashells. I pulled onto the grass, packed flat by years of carousel seasons, and killed the engine. Wind slid through a cracked window. Old scents clung in the air, roasted corn, fryer batter, tired charcoal, like a film you can't wash off. I flipped on the dome light. My lip was still numb. The tissue had browned, but the bleeding minded orders. I reached under the seat for the small first aid pouch I always keep there, habit of a medic, then rewrapped the split. Gauze, tape, check. My phone on the tray flashed the photo I'd just taken in the kitchen, the light clean, the timestamp clear, a marker I'd need. This was where I first learned at 15. My first fair shift, baggy volunteer t-shirt, standing in the flicker under the Ferris wheel, practicing the sentence, "You're okay," so people would believe me. I rapped a drunk who had clipped his head on the dartboard shelf. I memorized pulse points, pull direction, and how not to cinch so tight the skin bruised. Behind me, country music. In front, spilled syrup. I stopped seeing blood as scary. It was just information. A year later, I won a science fair with a first response kit built from a cookie tin. Gauze, tape, gloves, heavy line for big tears. While folks said girls ought to learn baking, I learned to stitch. Fair nights also taught me how the family needs money now, shows up with its own costume. My stepfather borrowed my AP fund to keep the wheat from drowning. Mom said God would pay it back double, and fall came without the money coming home. I worked the lemonade stand and bought a beat-up pickup, changed my own oil, dreamed of hauling a real EMT kit to real calls. Then one morning, a paper on the windshield. Sell truck to cover family debt. Mom's signature under it. No questions allowed. Just unbolt the plates and park it at the church garage. Adults called it virtue, sacrifice. Granddad was the only one who didn't use sacrifice as a free ticket. He'd been a medic young. His hands shook a little with age, but those blue eyes were sharp when he watched me roll a bandage. He gave me a yellowed postcard, a compass sketched in blue ink, the north line drawn long into a slightly bent arrow. "People will tug the needle their way," he said. "When it wobbles, don't move. Wait until it settles, then step." I slid the card inside my binder, more a map of how to be still than where to go. Under the sedan's warm dome light, I popped the glove box and pulled out my high school first aid kit, the same cookie tin now restocked. I laughed once. All these years and I'd kept it, a pocket of stillness. With a fine marker, I wrote inside the lid, "Fairground rule, assess, control bleeding, breathe, wait for the needle." Outside, the wheel has been stopped for years, but in my head it clicked and ticked like a metronome for choices you refuse to rush. I tipped the mirror. The cut had skinned over, not pretty but clean. I slid my seat back, set my spine tall so my chest could open. Then memory rolled in the day I set my enlistment bonus on the kitchen counter, coffee burnt in the air, the radio preaching grace. I tucked the envelope in the drawer beside the Bible and said it was for nursing classes after my contract. A month later, the drawer was empty. Mom said she'd borrowed it, emergency farm note. My stepfather blamed messy paperwork. God would make it right. I didn't know how to read bank statements then. I only knew how to read pulses, breaths, skin tone, so I went quiet. Then I shipped out like someone leaving a smoke-packed room, refusing another breath of it. My phone buzzed on the tray. Unknown number. Go to the hospital now. Mom told 911 you fell. They're riding it up. I stared at fell longer than it deserved. Falls don't split lips on the exact corner edge, and velvet boxes don't roll the exact groove line by accident. I didn't call to argue. I took another photo, this time with the fair sign in the background so I'd remember location, and added a note. Pause to stabilize, no engagement during agitation. In the mirror, I met my own eyes. Downrange, I learned the difference between a patient who needs morphine and one who needs a hand and the words, "You're here with me." At home, nobody said it. The empty fare said it for them. You're here, alone and still okay. I snapped the tin shut, one soft click between heartbeats. I slid a hand into my chest pocket and touched the edge of the compass card, thin as a dragonfly wing, rough enough to steady a palm. I started the car. Headlights washed over bleachers, shuttered stalls, a half-painted sign, family night. I said it in my head like a joke that never lands. I dropped it in drive and turned back toward the gravel road. A rabbit burst for the grass, quick, decisive, no look back. It taught me more than any sermon. Once you have a heading, get your feet off the ground. Closer to town, the church bells ticked soft, hay smell carried on the wind. I tightened my grip one notch, not from fear, but to cinch myself to the present. Half of me wanted to swing by the house, set the velvet box on the table again, and force them to say the right name for the thing that happened. The compass in my pocket reminded me, wait for the needle, then step. The ER has monitors, signatures, records, the language where lies suffocate. I needed that more than another argument under neon. A second text as I braked at a light. Don't tell the doctor nonsense. Mom already said you're clumsy. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because my face muscles finally let go. I typed one line, I'll tell the truth. Then I put the phone down and didn't wait for an answer. Green. I rolled into the hospital lot and studied the blue-lit windows of the ER wing. I fixed my collar, sharpened the crease, pulled my ID from my wallet, and slid Granddad's postcard into the inner pocket close to the heart. Before I opened the door, I took one last look at the mirror. A woman with a neat white strip on her lip, bright eyes, shoulders settled. I said it softly, the way you talk to a patient before the cut. Let's go in. Then I stepped into the night air, let the fairgrounds close behind me like an old chapter, and started the part of the story that belongs where it belongs. At admissions, with my name tied to a chart, an insurance code, and a chain of events no one else gets to narrate. The intake desk smelled like antiseptic cut with burnt coffee. I handed over my military ID and answered the admin questions in short bursts, saying nothing beyond, hit the kitchen counter. The clerk glanced at my bandage, nodded, slid a clipboard my way. I wrote in a steady tilt, request copies of all records upon completion of care. My pen wobbling with the table's rattle. They called my name. In the ER bay, fluorescent lights washed every dark corner in my head. A young doc asked 3 questions. An older nurse snapped open a drape, asked my pain scale. Manageable, I said and added, please chart location, size, and method of repair. When the needle touched skin, I breathed 4 in, 8 out, FOB muscle memory, staring at the ceiling and picturing the numbers like posts keeping my thoughts upright. They laid the last strip of tape, the door blew open. Mom, my stepfather, and my brother arrived in a cloud of Sunday perfume and nervous sweat. Mom told the doc she's clumsy since she was little. My stepfather tripped on the steps last night. My brother, work stress probably. I looked at the nurse, not my family. I want all medical communication addressed to me, I said, even and clear. I'm alert and have capacity. The old nurse's voice was gravel warm. We listened to the patient. She turned to the three of them. She needs quiet now, visiting later. Mom froze, eyes wet with that hybrid of piety and accusation. I faced the doctor. Please provide copies of orders, diagnosis, anesthetic used, and any pre-dress photos. He nodded, half surprised to meet a patient who knew the drill. They rolled me to a temporary spot in Recovery B. White curtains between beds, monitors ticking softly. A saline bag whispering its drip. A different nurse came, said her name, asked if I wanted her to call family. No, I said, but please note in my chart that I do not want family speaking on my behalf. She held my eyes a beat, understood, and wrote. Lowering my voice, I added, if anyone asks about money, direct them to my military insurance. I don't use cash and I won't provide PINs or passwords. She snorted. That's not hospital business. I know, I said. They'll ask anyway. The text arrived right on cue. Don't sign anything dumb. Dad will pay, just your PIN. The curtain shivered with the AC like the words had brushed it. I flipped my phone face down, opened my notes app, typed. Family requested PIN, declined payments through insurance only. I snapped a photo of the ceiling, no art in it, just a timestamp to anchor memory to a place and a decision. The ER doc returned with a sheaf of papers. No fracture, no major concussion. Keep it clean. Follow up. I asked him to sign that I'd received copies. He handed me a social worker's card if you need it. I thanked him. Little things like that, downrange or here, are tie-downs. They don't pull you out of the wind, but they tether you to ground. Mom came back alone, clutching a small Bible. She perched on the mattress edge and prayed, voice whispered, don't make this big. The church is taking a collection for our family. People are giving because they love you. I asked softly, into what account? Her eyes slid away. She talked about goodness. I watched her hands, sun freckles, fine veins, and said, I know what goodness looks like. It comes with an itemized receipt. She gripped the Bible like a life ring. This family needs you. I exhaled. I need family too, but I need our family's truth, not a palatable version of it. I pressed the call button. The nurse stepped in, polite, firm, ending the visit. Mom stood, eyes glassy, chin lifted like someone who's used tears as evidence. She left a jasmine trail behind. My stepfather tried a different angle. They said at the desk a portion's due up front, so I asked your PIN. I smiled without heat. TRICARE handles it. If there's a remainder, I'll pay with my card. Nobody needs my PIN but me. He patted the pocket where his phone sat, wearing the frown of a man who's found a door closed and the key isn't on his ring. My brother texted, cops will come if you lie. I locked the screen, shut my eyes, and let the splinters of words clatter to the floor. Tactical silence isn't losing. It's a long breath, long enough for adrenaline to drain so logic can surface. I disconnected the Roman 4, walked to the bathroom, checked the edges of the bandage. Sealed. A young nurse brought an extra pillow and murmured, you can request a visitor limit here. I smiled and asked her to note it. She nodded, stuck a small green label on the chart at my bed, tiny, but it felt like an invisible badge with actual authority. I texted an old family friend, a retired serviceman who used to fix our furnace and loved my granddad. Do you still have a line to call? Harold Whitman, granddad's friend. I typed slow, hit send, set the phone down. In my pocket, the compass postcard scraped my sternum with every breath, the needle tapping bone, be still long enough to see direction. Church bells drifted through the window, braided with hospital announcements. I closed my eyes and pictured last night's fairground. The Ferris wheel frozen, the cookie tin kit, the rule I'd written inside the lid, wait for the needle to settle. The curtains sighed again. The head nurse stepped in with a folder and a small note. Someone booked a visit under military priority, she said. He's in the lobby. She checked the slip and looked up with a thin smile. Name's call. Harold Whitman, MD, would you like to see him? I sat up. My chest answered before my mouth did. Yes. And right where the needle pointed, the story shifted, quiet as a hospital wheel rolling over vinyl, no fanfare, just the certainty of putting your foot exactly where it belongs. The door opened like a breath. A silver-haired man with the posture of someone who's carried heavy rucks his whole life stepped in. His lab coat was so crisp it almost rustled. He didn't reach for me first. He stopped at the foot of the bed, introduced himself in a low, clipped voice, ran sanitizer over his hands, then pulled a chair close. 3 questions, exactly the 3 good physicians ask. How's the pain? Any dizziness? Any nausea? I answered, adding where the ache radiated. He nodded, steady pupils, warm palm under my chin to check the edge of the dressing. You're fine, he said, and you're lucid. That wasn't only medicine, it was a stamp on my right to decide. I'm Harold Whitman, he said, sitting a little straighter. Your grandfather and I trained together. He told me if you ever needed help, come. I nodded. In my breast pocket, the compass postcard seemed to warm. What do you need from me right now? He asked. First, I said, I want all medical and administrative communication to go through me. If family tries to intervene, please note limits in my chart. And if money comes up, direct them to TRICARE. He allowed a small, rare smile. Clean ask, he said, turning to the head nurse who had slipped in. HIPAA forms, limited authorization, patient contact only. She nodded and left like someone who already knew the drill. Mom blew in smelling like church perfume. Bible clutched to her chest, stopping at what she considered a polite distance. Doctor, she said, she's clumsy, always making a fuss. Whitman looked at me, not the Bible and not the bandage. The patient has capacity, he said, not hard, not soft, just certain. We'll respect that. My brother peered around Mom's shoulder, half smiling. Who are you to act like you're in command? Only then did Whitman turn his head. Son, he said, in a hospital, command is standard of care and a patient's rights. Everything else is noise. The nurse returned with a stack of forms. Whitman skimmed, tapped his pen once against the tray, handed them to me. I read every line and signed 2 places. Limited authorization so Whitman could receive medical information and coordinate visits. Refusal to let family access my chart. A request to restrict visitors. I asked the nurse to add a note. All financial talk through TRICARE, no payments via patients' personal accounts. She wrote it in bold, the ink like a waypoint on a map. My stepfather came last, sweat beading his temples, flannel carrying a smokehouse smell. He offered a printout of a church email. The headline shouted, "Love offering for our soldier daughter." I glanced at it, then at him. Whitman lifted a hand for permission and took the page. Where does this love offering deposit? He asked. My stepfather muttered something about a family account. Whitman set the paper down, voice even. If it's to support the patient, the path of the money must be transparent. Otherwise, it becomes a different story. He turned to the head nurse. From now on, scheduled visits only. No finances in the care area. Special requests come to me. She fixed a small red tab to the chart at the foot of my bed, a bit of plastic the size of a stamp, and it felt like someone had taken a wet sandbag off my shoulders. Mom gripped the Bible tighter. You're turning our home business into paperwork, she said, voice thin as a blade. We're her family. I kept my tempo slow. I want it kept in the family too, but in the family is where I got shoved. Here we have nurses, records, signatures. Whitman laid a business card by the water cup. JAG helpline for service members and vets, he said. I'm not saying we'll need it. I'm saying it exists. He placed it the way an uncle would show a niece where the truck's first aid kit lives. My brother eyed the card like a red flag on a field. You bringing the army into our house? He said. No, I said. I'm bringing the truth in. He inhaled and edged back. My stepfather laced his fingers the way farm men bargain over seed. She's hot-headed, Doc. She hit the cabinet herself. Don't. Whitman lifted 2 fingers, barely. I examined her. No confusion, no impaired judgment. The choices are hers. He turned to me, lowered his voice. Do you want the visitor limit active now? 1 heartbeat. I nodded. The head nurse caught it, politely guided Mom and my brother out so the patient can rest. Mom looked at me like I'd slammed a church gate. The door settled closed, quiet as a lake when wind dies. In that stillness, Whitman set a small black recorder on the tray and turned the mic toward the room. I keep it in the open for any conversation that could turn sideways, he said. Not to threaten, to protect memory. I nodded, more aware than most how adrenaline rewrites the past. He opened a notebook and listed short lines. Soft tissue injury documented, records copied, family attempting to distort history, request for PIN noted. Tonight, he said, if you're willing, we hold a family meeting in the chaplain's room. No yelling, no blame, just paper, timelines, and specific questions. His voice had the cadence of somebody issuing orders under flares, clear, short, true. Part of me wanted to vanish back to a post where orders stack and violations have procedures. The compass card nudged my ribs with every breath. I'm willing, I said. On one condition, a hospital witness, and everyone knows it's recorded, no secret tapes. He nodded like he'd been waiting for me to set terms. Good, he said. Head nurse will attend. Chaplain will hold the room. I'll send a document list ahead, time-stamped injury photos less the church appeal. ATM withdrawals. You rest. He stood, smoothing his coat like a flag you iron flat. At the door he paused, his voice dipped just enough for me to feel it. Your grandfather used to say when people pull the needle, stand still till it finds north again. You've stood still long enough. Now we'll let the needle lead. I couldn't answer. My throat felt warm and light the way it does when the lidocaine starts to fade. The door clicked shut, leaving me with the monitor's steady beep and a business card catching the light by the water. I leaned back, slid the postcard from my pocket, traced the blue ink lines. I pictured the chaplain's room, polished wood smell, chairs in a circle, a pea-sized mic on the table, and how one simple question can slice a story that's been spackled over with piety. I smoothed the card, tucked it away, breathed 4 in, 8 out. Wheels whispered in the hall. White coats moved like stray ghosts in the glass. And here, finally, I had a perimeter. A doctor who knows how to say enough. A HIPAA form with wet ink, and a plan with steps you can follow in the dark. Survival isn't always daring. Sometimes it's procedure. Whitman came back carrying a clear plastic tray, not meds, paperwork. He set it on the rolling table and pulled his chair close, a small black recorder resting between us like a single open eye. Let's start with what no one can argue, he said. Pictures, time, records. I opened my phone, scrolled to the new folder, turned the screen sideways so it wouldn't sleep. First photo. My split lip in the kitchen, neon glare, the chipped counter edge, the velvet box just ghosting the corner. Timestamp in the frame, 1945. Second photo, the fairgrounds, signage in the background. I read the times out loud like I was reading a pulse. Whitman nodded. Enough to start a chain of events. He asked the head nurse to sit in as a witness. She pulled a chair, opened a spiral pad, and wrote the basics: date, time, document type, patient captured photos with timestamps. I switched to my banking app. My heart ticked 1 beat faster at the lines I've always hated. ATM withdrawals, transfers, the memo love offering family account. Zoom the note, Whitman said, leaning in. The detail view showed a beneficiary name that wasn't mine. I screenshotted it. His finger paused over a cash withdrawal logged the same night I reported the injury. Round number, like it had been agreed on ahead of time. Right beside it, a charge at a gas station near the casino. Got your brother's socials? He asked. I don't follow him, but blood has a smell and so do patterns. I knew where to look. Team logo avatar, his handle, a blurry roulette table in a story, posted somewhere between 20:00:22:00. I tilted the phone his way, no commentary, just the question implied. While I was wrapping my lip, he was there. The head nurse murmured as she wrote, social media, casino location, post time overlaps. We kept digging through the kit. Whitman had me pull my LES, pay statements I used to resent showing anyone. Tonight they felt like a flashlight in a tunnel. I logged into the portal, downloaded the PDF, and pointed to the rows, Bob, Bass, Hazard, Duty, the sterile lines I bought with nights on a dust runway. These aren't some bottomless faucet called army money, I said. They're shifts, they're skills I learned the hard way. He just nodded. On his coat, the pressed seams looked like underlines. We'll lay the pay beside the donations, he said, so the people at the table can see what belongs to you and what doesn't. Email next. The church blast. Love offering for our soldier daughter. A sappy copy, my name on their lips, my deployment photo pasted over a flag, and a donate link that landed in an account under my stepfather's surname. The head nurse sounded each word as she wrote it down, like filling a critical script. When we get in that room, Whitman said, we don't accuse. We place things side by side, timing, money path, labels, and ask one clean question. Why? He flipped his business card and made a little checklist. Photos done, statements done, email done, casino story done, less done. Anything missing? He asked. I thought of the enlistment bonus envelope from years ago. They borrowed it, I said. It disappeared into a dead tractor. He cocked his head. Any receipt left? I shook mine. Then we keep it as background, not the spine. The spine is the fundraiser in your name. On speaker, he called an old JAG buddy. The voice on the line was slow, wheat field calm, razor neat. No legal conclusions over the phone, the man said. But if the family used her status to raise funds into a personal account, that's at least a civil problem. Depending how it was done, there are fraud angles. She needs paper, not passion. Whitman thanked him and hung up. We don't wave acronyms like a threat, he said to me. We use them like guardrails. I set Granddad's compass postcard by the phone. The blue ink north line pointed straight at the door. He taught me to wait for the needle to settle, I said. Tonight we'll see where it points when everything's on the table. The head nurse handed me water. Chaplain's room is free from 19:00, she said. I'll be there. In my ears, the monitor's soft beeps turned into a steady metronome, someone tapping time for a calm orchestra. Whitman checked the stack like a medic checking a jump bag before wheels up. Gauze, tourniquet, morphine. Here, photos, statements, authorizations. When they get emotional, he said, don't interrupt, let them finish. Then put a finger on the page and ask the simple thing, what is this transaction? A precise question cuts cleaner than any accusation. I remembered field surgeries, how a scalpel only helps when you know exactly where to place it. We didn't need blood, we needed a clean line. My phone buzzed. Family group text. Mom, stepfather, brother, mom. We'll pray together tonight. Stepfather, that so-called doctor has no authority. My brother, a fist emoji. I glanced at Whitman. He gave the softest shrug, the tired smile of someone who sat through 100 hard rooms. We don't argue by phone, he said. We invite people to a room with chairs, lights, a witness. I replied with one line, 19:00 chaplain's room, hospital witness present, recording in the open. Nothing more. We packed the tray. Whitman slid the recorder into his pocket, left the JAG card on the table like a lifeline we didn't need to tug. He stood and touched the rail. Eat something. Nap, he said. The hardest part won't be the questions, it'll be the silences after them where people decide who they are. I leaned back under the thin blanket and thanked him. The door clicked. HVAC whispered. I laid the postcard on my chest and closed my eyes. My mind didn't run to the shove or the insults. It ran straight lines between photos, receipts, posts, pay lines that intersected at one point. 1900 Chaplin's room. When I woke, the window wore a strip of late sun. I washed my face, checked the bandage, pressed my uniform flat. I sent myself a note. Tonight's goals ask, don't accuse. Hear, don't swallow. Verify, don't persuade. I picked up the velvet box, then set it back down. It wouldn't be needed. I only needed the compass, an even voice, and papers that tell the story without shaking. A gurney rolled by outside, quiet as an ally. I laced my boots. There was still time before 7, but I could feel the north in my chest steadying. And when the needle holds still, your feet don't tremble when you put them down. The chaplain's room smelled like polished wood and candle wax. Soft yellow lights, chairs in a circle. In the middle, a low table and a small black recorder placed openly. I took the seat facing the door. Whitman sat off to the side like a gentle referee. The head nurse carried a folder edged with colored tabs. Mom came first, Bible clutched to her chest. My stepfather followed in a starched flannel. My brother slipped in half a beat late, phone screen still lit with a casino icon in his history. Whitman opened the meeting like a clinical huddle, names, purpose, time box. We're here to set documents side by side, he said. Not to accuse, to ask. He turned the recorder toward the room. This device is recording in the open. If anyone's uncomfortable, say so now. No one spoke. He nodded for me to begin. I didn't start with feelings. I set my phone on the table and pulled up the kitchen photo. Blood smear on the counter's chipped edge. The velvet box ghosted in the corner, timestamp 1945. I nudged the phone forward. This is when I was injured, I said. Same night, fairgrounds. I swiped to the second image with the sign in the background, 2012. The head nurse wrote the marks like mapping coordinates. Mom looked at the photos, then at me, mouth shaping. Can we pray first? But Whitman raised a hand. We'll pray after, he said. Data first. I opened my banking app. This transfer labeled love offering family account lands in an account under my stepfather's surname, I said, zooming the beneficiary. And this is a cash withdrawal at the ATM by the casino that same night. My brother snapped. That was for bills. Whitman tilted his head. Good. Then here's the clean question. Why did donations labeled for our injured soldier daughter go to a family account, not the patient, not a hospital fund? Silence. My brother's eyes slid to Mom. Mom set the Bible down, her hands trembled. I pulled up the church email next, showed the head nurse first, then set it in the center. The appeal uses my name, I said. That's my deployment photo pasted over a flag. The donate link routes to the family account. My stepfather cleared his throat. People gave because they love us. We're one family. Whitman asked, as evenly as if he were choosing a suture, do you have any written authorization from the patient to use her name and image to raise money for personal accounts? The question cut clean. My stepfather stared at his dusty boots. I swiped to my brother's casino story, zoomed the roulette edge, the post time overlapping the window when I was taking medical photos to stabilize. This, I said quietly, is where you were while I was documenting my injury. He snorted. You stalking my socials, pathetic. Whitman slid a card across to him, free addiction counseling info. If you want to help your family, he said, we can talk after this. Right now we return to the question, where did the money go and why? The silence held longer this time. Mom sighed and opened the Bible like a fan, reading nothing. "You're turning love into numbers," she said. "People believe in blessing." I nodded. "So do I. In the ER, blessing looks like records. In a church, blessing looks like transparency." I tapped the email. "You can tell the board this was wrong, even if unintentional. We can refund and post a correction." Mom pressed her lips thin, eyes storm dark. Whitman passed out a one-page agenda, 5 tidy bullets, photos and timestamps, ER record, church appeal, cash withdrawals, casino post. He read each item and paused long enough for everyone to look at paper, not each other. "If you have correcting information," he said, "now is the time." My stepfather lifted the sheet awkwardly and set it down like it burned. "We were pulling together to get through a tough stretch," he muttered. "Money that wasn't used right we'll put back." He said put back like he was still calculating from which pile. "I'm not demanding money," I said, hearing my voice land soft and flat. "I'm demanding the truth goes to the right address." My brother shot up, palm slapping his thigh. "Truth is you play the victim so people feel sorry for you." I didn't bite. I slid my chair a fraction so his shadow didn't fall across me and looked at Whitman. He tapped his pen once. "No one is a victim here," he said. "Everyone is responsible for what they say." He turned to me. "Your closing question." I lined the images and the email and the statement like a sturdy crutch. "My question is, who decided to use my name to raise money into a family account and why?" The quiet that followed felt like a hospital corridor after shift change. Mom closed the Bible. "If it was you, say so," I said gently. "Then I can fix it with the board. If not, I meet them tomorrow." Her face traveled through 100 countries of emotion. At last she said only, "You don't have to do this." I answered, "I need oxygen. In here, oxygen is called transparency." Whitman leaned back, voice dropping half a note. "We'll close the presentation," he said. "For safety and for the patient's recovery, starting tomorrow we'll request restricted visitation, only with the patient's consent. Regarding the fundraiser, recommend immediate pause and an internal audit." He looked at each of them as if handing meds with names on the labels. "If you object, we'll add it to the record." My brother's palm smacked his thigh again, dry like cardboard. "You're kicking us out of our daughter's life," he yelled. "No," I said. "I'm asking you to step out of my story unless you're ready to tell the same truth I am." My throat felt suddenly light, maybe because clarity makes room for air. The head nurse clipped the notes together. 1900 logged, exhibits reviewed, objectives met. The chaplain tapped the door and asked for a closing prayer. We joined hands, not for agreement, but for ritual. When we let go, Whitman clicked the recorder off. The tiny tick sounded like a period. He spoke low, almost only for me. "Tomorrow I'll file with hospital administration." I gathered my phone and touched the compass postcard through my pocket. I looked at Mom one last time that night. "I don't hate you," I said. "I'm just done walking a road that leans away from north." Her lips moved, but words didn't make it out. My stepfather nodded like a man who's watched dusk drop on his field. My brother looked away and left too fast. We stepped into the corridor. The hospital air was cool and clear. Overhead lights stretched into a runway of white posts. I heard a gurney roll, a vending machine burble, my heartbeat even out. At the corner, Whitman said, "You did well." I nodded without smiling, feeling my shoulders fall half an inch. I thought of tomorrow, forms for restricted visits, a talk with the church board, the way numbers do what prayers can't. Get oxygen moving. Tonight, in a room that smelled like wax and wood, we'd set the needles straight. The rest would just be footsteps. Morning came in with coffee and paper scrape sounds in hospital administration. Sun slid through the glass like a long strip of gauze, laying a clean line across every forehead in the room. I sat across from a salt and pepper administrator. To my right, the head nurse with a tabbed folder. To my left, Whitman, lab coat pressed like a bold-face order. He slid a packet my way. First section, restricted visitation until I consent otherwise. Second, a note about financial interference in the care area. Last, hotlines if harassment crops up. I read every page, combat habit, never sign until you know where your life is about to be placed. When my pen touched paper, it made a faint swish like snipping in Roman 4 line. No alarms, no flashing lights. The code blue inside me eased half a beat. Whitman said he'd hand copies to the front desk and hang a small sign at my door. Not big, he said. Big just provokes. We want effect, not theater. I thanked him. He nodded the way a surgeon does when the right tray hits the right hands. Before we left, he set down a civil attorney's card. Even if you don't plan to, keep it. I slid it into my wallet next to my military ID, 2 different plastics that say the same thing. There's a process. In the parking lot, the breeze smelled like gas and wet grass. I stood under a maple and thumbed my phone for a ride when footsteps came up. My brother stepped from between SUVs, cap low, hands in pockets, the slouch of someone who doesn't practice apologies. We talk in private, he said. I kept the gap, squared my spine, propped my phone on the hood with my wallet, and started recording openly. We don't do private, I said. We do clear. He smirked, eyes hunting for a camera he could sweet talk. You're wrecking the family, dragging outsiders in. The church money was just holding money. I asked, why'd holding run straight through the casino? He flicked his hand. My buddy posted that, not me. I didn't argue. I pointed back at the building. If you want to fix this, start with Mom and the church board. I'll be there. If you want to swing, I'll walk. I'm not doing both bandaging and taking hits at the same time. He went quiet, the way people do at a door marked push while they keep pulling. I pulled a handwritten letter from my pocket, folded in thirds, let him see the top line. To Mom. Not an indictment, I said. A boundary. There's a way back for her if she wants it. I didn't hand it over. It wasn't his to carry. He laughed, anger mixed with gravel, then toe-kicked a pebble hard enough to spark if it hadn't rained. I walked to the church a few blocks over. Lunchtime lot empty, last week's slogan still on the board. The trustees were 3, a retired teacher, a carpenter, a young pastor. I kept it short. Fundraising email, bank statement, photos, and asked them to pause donations in my name, run an internal audit, and if needed, post a clear correction. The pastor twirled his pen, staring at paper like it might yield a verse. Do you want the money back? He asked. I shook my head. I want the label right. Money meant for a patient should land where it's supposed to. The teacher nodded, eyes bright the way they get when you've graded too many essays off prompt. The carpenter coughed, saw hitting a nail. Then we stop now. I'll call the bank. I said, and please post a thank you and a we're sorry, no names. The pastor exhaled like he'd just unhooked a hanger from his collar. Back on the sidewalk, the building and my shadow stretched long as twin ink strokes that never quite meet. Mom called. I let it ring 3 beats, then picked up. Her voice rustled like pledge cards. You gonna shame me in front of the church? No, I said. I'm giving the air back to the people who need to breathe it. She went still long enough I could hear the kitchen clock. I didn't know it got like this, she said, small. I thought people were giving out of love. I pressed my shoulder to warm brick and touched Granddad's compass through my pocket. I know, and I believe you can be the one who repairs it, but I'm not a sacrifice to a vague idea called family anymore. Only breathing on the line. I'll think, she said, and hung up like setting a Bible down and letting the page turn itself. Whitman waited in the lobby with 2 cups of tea and sugar packets. We don't win, we establish, he said, handing me one. Establishing is the only victory you can live with. I told him about the board. He nodded. That's how transparency becomes a shared language. He reminded me we'd finish paperwork tomorrow and update the visitation note. I told him I wasn't hiding. I just wanted sleep without pots clanging and eyes pretending to witness. Afternoon flowed down the hall like honey. I wrote the letter to Mom on a borrowed clipboard. I love you. Love needs oxygen. I'll be where there's oxygen, where people speak true, sign true, return what isn't theirs. If you want that, I'll meet you there. I folded it and asked the head nurse to mail it. I kept a copy for myself and slid it beside the compass postcard. 2 arrows, one pointing north, one pointing away. Sometimes you don't end a code blue with a defibrillator. You end it by pulling the wrong lines. My brother didn't show again. Maybe he sat on the church steps or in the garage where my old pickup used to live. I didn't need his conversion story. I only needed him to stop resting blame on whichever shoulder would hold it. My stepfather texted, "We'll talk like adults." I replied with one word, tomorrow. Tomorrow is when the paperwork stands up with me, when I'm not speaking with the parched throat of a kid begging to be believed. At dusk, I took the little hospital courtyard, flaking green chairs, sky laid flat as one giant dressing. I thought about Fort Riley, the asphalt into the gate, barracks lit, floors scrubbed of sweat, the classes I promised to teach the younger women when I came back. I thought about the Nightingale Fund sketched in pencil, seeded with my paycheck and whatever clean refunds came after the audit to cover EMT tuition for women vets. A goal that doesn't need spin, just invoices. Inside, reception handed me an envelope, restricted visitation confirmed. I signed, thanked her, and walked slow. The overhead panels fell in even squares, guided breathing for the eyes. The door latched behind me without the choke I'd heard that first night, just a clean, final snick, like an exclamation point gentled into a period. I sat on the bed, unthreaded my boots, set Granddad's postcard by the water. "Not a victory," I whispered. "An exit from no oxygen." I shut off the lamp, pulled the blanket to my sternum, and touched the edge of the bandage like touching a reminder. The cut is closing. Not by miracle, because I stopped letting other people decide where my blood goes. That night I slept deep. Somewhere in that air without kitchen smoke, I heard the alarm finally go silent. No volunteers running, no nurse sprinting, no one shouting clear. Just a quiet room, soft light, papers lined up square, and an old compass pointing exactly where it always pointed. Code blue, terminated. I waited behind a thin velvet curtain in a small post auditorium, listening to chairs scrape and low country voices trade weather and names. The floor smelled like fresh polish, plastic and pine. Outside, sunset poured through glass in dull knife strips, nothing threatening, just a reminder that every day walks itself to the edge. I touched the compass postcard in my breast pocket. The blue ink felt a little worn. The bandage that once bridged my lip was down to a faint pink line, like a handprint fading on glass. No monitor beeps here, just ordinary sounds, a smoker's cough, a soft chuckle, someone greeting a familiar name. Whitman slipped through the curtain, lab coat traded for a crisp white shirt. He handed me a folded program, Nightingale Fund Veteran Women EMT Scholarship, in small type beneath, founded by a combat medic. I smiled. "Ready?" he asked. Ready doesn't mean the shaking stops. It means you've named the shake, know where it lives in your body, and step up anyway. I walked to the little stage and stood behind a wooden lectern. The lights weren't as hot as I'd imagined. They felt like Sunday sun through stained glass. First row, the head nurse from the town hospital beside Whitman, a VA rep with a notebook, the young pastor from my old church. He'd already sent the public correction and apology. And at the corner, 2 young women in scrubbed field uniforms, hair pinned tight. My mother wasn't there. My stepfather wasn't there. My brother wasn't there. I knew that before the curtain moved. A piece of my heart still watched the door, but the rest had learned how to close the drape. I kept my intro short, name, unit, the longest shift I ever worked, and why we were gathered. Tonight isn't about a wound, I said, voice carrying without the mic. It's about how a woman can take the hands she trained to bandage with and rebuild one life, her own, and then help rebuild others. With tuition, with clean paperwork, with a bus pass to EMT class, with a first aid tin that doesn't get lost in a glove box. I told them about the fairground night, about taping my own lip and taking photos with timestamps, about the chaplain's room and the recorder sitting in plain sight, about the church board and the correction posted on Sunday's bulletin. I didn't name people. I named documents. Then I opened a small box, the cookie tin from high school that became my first kit. Gauze, tape, forceps, all lined up like the sentences I wrote to stop myself from drifting. This is what I want to pass on, I said. Not because it's precious, because it reminds me survival is often 3 moves: assess, control, bleeding, breathe. I announced the Nightingale Fund. Seed money, I said, comes from my own paycheck and a clean reimbursement after the church audit. Applause rose, firm and tidy, like a palm laid on a table to steady the papers. The VA rep smiled and nodded. The young pastor jotted notes. The announcement would go on next week's board. I laid out the criteria: women veterans or soon-to-separate service members with a recommendation letter, a locked-in EMT or nursing schedule, and most important, a commitment to do clinical hours in underserved clinics. We'll cover tuition, I said, and we'll ask you to teach one other person something you learn. That's how the chain doesn't snap. A soldier in the 3rd row raised her hand. Do we need a high GPA? She asked, voice trembling but brave. I grinned. You need steady breathing and hands that don't shake when you pull tape. Grades help. They don't replace a heart that knows where the artery lies. Laughter loosened the room. I invited the 2 young women up. I pressed the old tin into the first one's hands. Don't baby it, I said. It was made to be used. To the second, I gave a temporary fund card and a date for training next week. In the wings, Whitman's eyes shone behind a fine film, as if a windshield had caught dawn. Someone asked, careful, kind, if my family was better. I looked down at the compass card, then up into the lights. Family has a lot of definitions, I said. I'm choosing the one with oxygen, a place where truth doesn't suffocate anyone. I sent a letter. I'll wait for their answer when they are ready. Meanwhile, I'm doing what I know how to do. Turn goodwill into receipts, prayers into class schedules, pity into skill. After the talk, a line formed, handshakes, names, little histories. An older woman told me her son had served where I'd served. A man offered an envelope. I declined. Please use the fund account, I said. We publish every line. He nodded like someone who just learned the right way to wrap a laceration. The young pastor came up and apologized again for the misdirected appeal. Thank you for correcting it, I said. Correction doesn't erase the past. It resets north. Out in the hallway, the overhead lights ran long like a conveyor of calm through clinic doors. Whitman walked beside me. Your grandfather would be proud, he said. I took out the postcard and set it on his palm for a second, like letting him touch a needle fully rested, then tucked it back. He told me to keep it close to my heart, I said. We walked on in companionable quiet. At the corner window, I looked in on a sleeping young soldier, hands folded over his stomach as if holding something small. I knew that feeling, when you cradle a wound you've finally named. Naming is the start of healing. At the steps, night air pushed across the courtyard and turned the leaves to faint receipt paper rustle. I stood on the top landing, watching red taillights stitch the highway. Out there, the road doesn't ask where you came from. It asks you to keep a lane and go straight. I thought about tomorrow, the first email to applicants, the call to the community college, a month 1 budget sheet. I pictured walking a young soldier from her barracks to class, the cheap sandwich and coffee between labs, the first practicum where her hands will shake on the tourniquet. I smiled because I know where I'll be when that happens, standing beside her, saying the sentence that carried me through 100 long nights. You're here with me. Dark settled for good. Fort Riley's corridors clicked to their last clusters of light like someone stamping end of shift. I slid the postcard back into my pocket, zipped my jacket to my sternum, and started down the steps. Some stories end with a verdict. Mine ends with a scholarship workflow and a classroom with the lights on. Some families hold you with fear. Mine, from tonight on, will be new hands learning to hold pressure, the laughter after a clean clinical, invoices paid and logged as received. I walked toward the lot, heard my boots answer the concrete, and knew one simple thing for certain. When North holds steady, any road can be a way home, as long as you choose to keep walking.